Hey, what's going on everyone? Jay's 2 Cents here, and I was not planning on making this video today. I was planning on doing something entirely different, but I think this is important to get out there and amplify to get the word out to as many people as possible. And that is that CableMod has officially launched a voluntary recall for both the 1.0 and 1.1 angled adapters for the 12-volt high power cables. So let's just sort of go ahead and get right into it. We're not going to put any ads or anything on this. I don't think anyone would want a pre-roll or whatever launched up against drama like this. Anyway, just moving on, get right into it. I'm gonna read their statement. What we have right here is a statement from CableMod that's on their website. They also posted it into their CableMod subreddit. It's also on their forums, their Discord, and it's also obviously making the rounds in all the other subreddits and Discords and stuff like PCMR or PC Master Race, Build a PC, all PC Gaming, all that stuff. It's important. Any recall like this that's about potential damage is important. All right, so let's just start with their statement. It's not very long. It says, "Dear hardware community, it has come to our attention that certain CableMod 12-volt high-powered angle adapter V1.1s may be defective. We have since decided to discontinue sales of our angled adapters." Probably the best thing they've ever done right there. "We will be conducting a voluntary safety recall for all CableMod 12-volt high-powered 90-degree and 180-degree adapter V1.0s and all CableMod 12-volt high-power 90 and 180-degree angled adapters V1.1. That sounds super official with the way it's naming, because part of the recall is it has to be very specific on the, like if there were product numbers and stuff with a bunch of different products, it'd be important to put the whole product SKU in there. It's a small company, so they don't have like quote unquote SKUs like that, so they just named it out entirely. Covering all variants as well, obviously variant A and variant B. I think they might have even wanted to say that, variant A, variant B, but anyway, moving on. "Because of the potential risk that the male connector could become loose, overheat, and melt into the GPU." I feel like that should have been reworded. I feel like it should say connector could become loose, overheat, or melt into the GPU. The reason I'm saying that, I know I said I would break this down at the end, but we'll just do it as we're going. There are lots and lots of folks that are adamant, the ones that have emailed me, put up their posts on Reddit and whatnot, that the cable was not loose, that the adapter was not loose and it was firm and seated fully. There's still so much speculation out there from people that the adapters have wiggled loose and that causes the problem. But I got an email from someone not that long ago that told me their adapter failed and they checked it like weekly, like OCD levels of always pushing on it, making sure it's firm, it's seated, and then one day they happened to smell the plastic and then it was still melted in. It was melted, fully seated. So I think there's a design spec problem with the 12-volt high power, and we know that. Anyway, so I don't think it should say and melt into. I think it should say or melt, because there's evidence that it can melt without being loose. In my opinion, saying it could have been loose puts all of the responsibility and blame on the end user, and I think we've already proven through just evidence that there are times it melts without it being on the end user. So I just think it's important that we change that terminology. But this is an official statement that I'm sure has gone through all lawyer vetting. It says this recall will apply only to our angled adapters and will not affect our angled cables. I'm gonna address that real quick. I have known CableMod for close to 8 years now. CableMod's angled cables, like the 90-degree plug cable on there, as well as their 180 or straight cables. As far as I could tell, I did some searching. I'm not seeing any evidence of people posting that those have failed or melted. Same thing with like Corsair's 12-volt high power replacement cable or adapter, the one that goes from like the standard 8-pin PCI Express to the 12 volts, whether it be the 2-plug or the 3-plug. I actually looked across a lot of the brands, even the cheap like Amazon ones, and I'm not finding posts of people complaining about those cables melting. So it really does seem to be something with the adapter design itself. Anyway, it says we'll be sending out an official notice of and full details for our voluntary safety recall in the upcoming days. I'll explain at the end of reading this why they're saying the notice is coming out when this sounds like a notice. There's a whole process involved, and we'll talk about that. It says, in the meantime, owners of the CableMod 12-volt high power V1.0 and 1.1 angled adapters should stop using them immediately. Bold, should be underlined probably as well. Please do not touch the adapters while your system is running. This should be common sense. Please power down your system and wait until the adapter has had adequate time to cool down before handling. I think that's just a safety measure. If it was maybe on the verge of starting to melt and you weren't aware and it was like right on the verge of being soft heated plastic and you go to touch it, you could burn yourself. So that's just good common sense to just make sure it's not hot. Maybe even point a fan at it just in case. I mean, at this point, it sounds so ridiculous, but so is this entire spec. It says, please reach out to our customer service if your GPU has been affected by a failed V1.0 1.1 angled adapter, and we'll help you out. They also give the CableMod support link right there. We apologize for inconveniencing our loyal customers. We hope that you will let us make it up to you in the future. I want to talk about the service. So before it became a really widespread problem, CableMod was actually, if they would recommend, reach out to your GPU manufacturer for an RMA. If they were not willing to RMA, then CableMod would essentially buy your GPU from you for the replacement of a GPU. So they would buy you the comparable GPU and then take yours. What they would then do is they would have the adapter replaced. It's actually really easy to replace that adapter, that connector. They would replace the connector, and then they were using them for like giveaways and other like contests and drawings and stuff, where they had now a stack of repaired GPUs, and then they were doing stuff with them. As the GPU shortage started to hit again, with all of the embargo stuff going on with China, and 4080s and 4090s were hard to get their hands on, they were stuck with only being able to do repairs because of the fact that there were no new inventories in the US, at least, to replace those cards with. I'll tell you right now, I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again. I would personally be okay with them replacing the cable mechanism itself, the adapter mechanism, because of the fact that I would know what my PCB has been through. I would know the fact that it's not a refurb. I would know that it's not been something that's been returned and resold or used or whatever. It's my GPU with a new connector soldered onto it. It's 12 points of solder. It's actually very easy for a solder technician to replace that. The melting connector doesn't damage the board PCB itself most of the time, unless something were to bridge, but they don't bridge, it just gets stuck and melted. Typically what would happen is maybe the sideband connector would melt, break that connection, and then you would no longer get an image because of the fact that the sideband wasn't giving a signal. There's tons of videos online you can find of people replacing the connector to get your GPU to work. So I just want to put that out there, that don't be so hesitant to accept a repaired GPU over a replacement. More often than not, these brands that like Gigabyte and whatnot that are gonna be providing replacements are gonna be RMAs, and you don't know why they were RMA'd. So I'd much rather, they're refurbed, and I would much rather have my GPU than a refurb personally. But your opinion may vary, and that's perfectly fine. I wanna see what some of the comments are on this, and then we will go into what this recall means, why they are saying more to come, more to follow. And then realistically, the whole point of this video is just to amplify the message, to get it out to more people that, hey, if you have a V1.0 or 1.1, be prepared to get it back to CableMod. We'll talk about all that in a second here. So somebody had responded to, it was the same exact link to their recall, right? So this person here said, God, the timing, mine melted literally an hour ago. And then iCheer Weird Things says, pretty sure they made this recall in response to your post, man. No, they didn't. This recall and the process that they're going into was much longer than an hour ago, okay? Nice to think that might be the case, but it's not any one person's post. It is a collaborative, like, landscape appraisal, if you will, of what is happening, to say there is a much bigger problem here than one-off onesie twosies, which initially thought in the beginning, and then it became to like an everyday occurrence regarding melting connectors, specifically with the CableMod angled adapter. He says, and the reason why I'm even reading the comments right now is I'm kind of reading the room on what people are saying, because I think the biggest concern for CableMod here is like, what has this done to their reputation? And recalls are scary and recalls are expensive. And I think, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second here. It says, glad to know they are responsible enough to go with this measure, even if it is the bare minimum, since most companies can't even do the bare minimum nowadays. And he's kind of right. Some companies won't even do the bare minimum, but I think they're going above and beyond the bare minimum. They haven't even said what the recall plan or action plan is yet, and you're telling them they did the bare minimum. So back off a little bit and give the brand a chance to actually say what is gonna happen before you can even ascertain if it's been minimum or not. So that was really kind of a stupid comment. Sucks, but this Reddit has been a constant stream of melting and burning for months. Yeah, ever since let's not forget the melting started with the 4-prong adapters that came with the card, not just CableMod. That adapter came out later. It's just unfortunately they put their foot, like if floor is lava, they jumped into the lava, unfortunately, by just getting involved in this stupid 12-volt high power spec to begin with. He says, yes, and they're probably going to expect us to pay for shipping again. This is so. I personally feel like CableMod should cover shipping. I really do. That's, it's like if your car breaks down under warranty, more often than not, the dealer / warranty company / the manufacturer will cover the cost of towing. Sometimes though, you gotta pay that towing up front and get a reimbursement, and reimbursements suck. but I'd still rather have a reimbursement than nothing. But we're talking about such a small, light item, I don't see why shipping shouldn't be covered. I mean, we're talking about a small item. Like, it's not heavy at all. We're talking a bubble wrap pack. Who cares if it gets damaged, right? A bubble wrap pack, stick it in there. Standard ground shipping should cost you a few bucks, that's it. They said it certainly will because it's voluntary, not a mandatory recall. No, because that's not how that works. The voluntary means you don't have to send it in. It means the company has also volunteered to initiate the recall. A mandatory recall means somebody like the CPA or the Consumer Protection Authority steps in and says, you must do the recall, like the Takata airbag situation, right? Where every car in the freaking world had a recalled airbag that there was no choice for the manufacturer to do because it was being forced upon them. So that's the difference between a voluntary and a mandatory. Voluntary is the company initiates, mandatory is some other agency like the CPA or whatever. That's for the US. I don't know who handles it in Europe and stuff. They tell the brand you have to do it. Better yet, stop trusting this fucking company to make safe adapters or cables. First of all, their cables have been solid, but their cable reputation is going to take a hit now because of the reputation hit that the adapters have caused. So this person is obviously speaking from a very emotionally charged position, but unfortunately when you word your statements like that, you get taken a lot less serious. All I've seen is issues with them. Why would you want credit towards another cable that will likely just fail after a couple of months? Because there's no evidence of those cables actually failing yet. But the realistics, right here, to be fair, they have stuck by their products and offered full refunds and have done their best to make the community aware of these problems. Yeah, because what you're seeing here is this person is speaking from nothing from a position of hate and not from a position of logic. You know, PC nerds are very opinionated and their opinions are very strong. And so that's fine, I get it. That guy's opinion is the most important to him because it's a personal opinion. That's the most important thing to you. Stop using adapters, cable mod, or the NVIDIA one. Hey, Poop and Cheese gets it. I like how I read it and then realized what his name was after I read it. JSUSense will probably blame NVIDIA. NVIDIA didn't create the spec, that's PCI SIG, but NVIDIA did give input. Mine is using a PSU to 12 volt high power cable from them. It's not an adapter, it's direct to PSU. And that's what I started to say earlier, is the direct cables so far as we can tell, have not really had a problem. The melting adapters from the one that comes with the box, or the GPU, as well as these K-Watt angled adapters are melting. We tried to find any sort of anecdotal evidence that maybe the WireView one from Der Bauer might have had melting problems too, but I don't think those were sold anywhere near the level of the volume that these have. So there's probably very little reports back on those. But anyway, I do love when people peg me a fanboy. It's perfectly fine. I'm a fanboy over the genre and not any one particular brand. Like there's no brand out there, even EVGA, that deserves blind loyalty from anybody, as far as I'm concerned. But you go ahead and drink your Kool-Aid there. You got a little bit of like the red lipstick going on there from your Kool-Aid. Anyway, moving on, I literally can't even reach my 4080 unless I use my V1.1. My cable isn't long enough. So that sort of sucks on that one. That might be time to buy a longer cable, but again, who are you gonna trust for cables now, right? So what I started to see here, and I was hoping I would see some of these here, is there's some folks that are saying, well, this sucks. The only way I could close my side panel on my case was by using the angle adapter. That's not CableMod's fault. That was CableMod seeing a void and a need that needed to be filled. These extra tall GPUs, and the ones that are burning are 4090s, like 95% of them, and then I think some 4080s, but 4090s with up to 600 watts. Big old giant tall coolers, and then you have these thick cables that are sticking out and you're not supposed to put a tight bend on them and you can't physically close your case panel. That is not CableMod's fault on any stretch of the imagination. If you think that is CableMod's fault, then just click off this video because you're not gonna understand the rest of what I'm about to say. But when it comes to knowing that there's like this much space between your GPU and the case, falls on two things. One, the manufacturer of the GPUs making these super tall GPUs, and then two, case manufacturers not giving enough space. Typically, any GPU would fit in a normal case because of the fact that they weren't super tall. But it's only been over the last couple generations we've seen these extra height GPUs with these super long rigid cables sticking out become a problem. Don't be surprised if in the next couple of years we see cases be a little bit wider because of that very reason. But again, this was not CableMod's fault for your cable not fitting in your case with that's the case manufacturer and the GPU manufacturers that created that problem. So CableMod tried to make a product that would fit a need. Unfortunately, they stuck their feet right in the lava of a cable spec that we know is just already iffy to begin with, and then you add the potential wiggle wobble and stuff of an adapter that is just an extra connection point that could lead to problems. And unfortunately, that is what CableMod has experienced now is they are just knee deep in a problem that they absorbed by even going in business with something like this particular spec. I'm happy to see that CableMod is just like, screw the adapters, we're not doing them anymore. I'll be honest, I stated they should probably do that back when the V1.0 fiasco came out. I was just like, guys, and I guess I've known the owners of CableMod for like 8 years now. They've been sponsors of ours off and on because I love their sleeved cables and their full cable sets. There's never been anything wrong with those, but this is unfortunately going to tarnish the brand as a whole because of the most latest reason CableMod has been in your feed is because of this stuff. So unfortunately it resonates and it leaves a bad taste for a lot of buyers, and it's going to take time for that trust to be regained from people. But I did state a while ago, I'm like, guys, you probably shouldn't be doing these adapters. I don't think it's a good idea. I think you should just be clean and free of the spec problem. And unfortunately, they're learning this the hard way. Let's talk about the recall itself and what this means. Right now, what you're seeing is an official recall within the organization. I did reach out this morning to CableMod for some direct comments. And I can tell you that there's no direct comments that were able to be given to me at this time. So that's the whole, like, we cannot comment on the situation. Now, there's a couple ways you can take that. One, the CPA, or the Consumer Protection Authority. When you do a recall in an official governmental scale like that, or overseeing body like that, there is a lot of legal that happens. A lot of legal. And when it's a voluntary one, meaning they did not initiate it, the company does, the process takes longer. It really does, because their priority is with the mandatory ones that are specifically about consumer safety. Now, there's consumer safety and consumer protection. And some could argue that this particular recall should be fast-tracked because of the fact that we're dealing with heat-related melting of stuff, which, to the best of my knowledge right now, has not led to a full-blown fire of any sort. But it's kind of like the NZXT stuff. When it led to a quote-unquote fire in a few systems, that was where things became a little bit more serious, and the heat, no pun intended, got turned up on the speed at which that was processed. But I want to assume that you're gonna see an official scale recall through like the CPA type of deal because of the fact that they were not able to discuss it with me. The reason why I say that is because not being able to discuss it is part of the requirements of going through the Consumer Protection Authority. It gets assigned a case number, it gets assigned a case worker, a person who is a direct liaison between the initiating lawyer for the recall. That's all done through legal, it's all done through lawyers. Just like if you were to, like, I guess, I don't know, if you were going to go through like a lemon law, right, with the manufacturer of a car, or you have to buy back or whatever, usually a lemon law lawyer gets involved to get the things rolling, right? So the same thing happens with recall lawyers. They get contacted by the brand, all the information. They're the ones that make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and everything's signed where it needs to be to get it pushed to the CPA. And until it gets a case number and a case worker, everything's in limbo and nothing is legally allowed to be discussed. So because I basically was told like, hey, can't talk about it right now, to me seems like a big indicator that this is going to turn into a much larger agency controlled type of recall. When you submit something to the CPA, you also have to submit an action plan. It's not just, okay, you are buying back all of these adapters, which is essentially what they're doing with the recall. They are buying it back. And I want to point out once again, the importance of understanding that voluntary does not mean it's voluntary for the consumer to send the item back. It meant the brand is voluntarily initiating the recall. There's too much misunderstanding here of people that just don't know what they're talking about, going in here and just having diarrhea of the mouth thinking that the voluntary means it's voluntary for the consumer to send it back. That part is always voluntary. Even in a mandatory recall, that part is voluntary. You can choose not to do it. No one's gonna come and put a gun to your head and say, send it back. You should if it's mandatory for safety reasons. So the action plan states, what are you doing as a company to make it right? Because they could just say, hey, something's bad, they should send them all back, but we're gonna keep all the money. You know, make it rain. There has to be an action plan. So that action plan also has to be approved by the Consumer Protection Authority. In my opinion, this is opinion here because this is not official information from them. I'm telling you how the process works and what I think they should do. I believe CableMod should give full cost of the adapter back, guarantee repair of the GPUs, which they already kind of have it like, hey, we'll help you out, but that sounds an awful lot like a trust me bro. I think it needs to be in writing. We will absolutely replace your GPU or repair your GPU with comparable or greater quality of product. I mean, that is for a $50 adapter, you took responsibility for a $1,500 plus device. And you own that now because it's like a mechanic. The last one to work on your car owns the problem, right? Even if the problem wasn't yours. There needs to be a refund of shipping, both ways. So this is gonna get very expensive, but this is how you earn trust back. So the cost of the adapter, guaranteed repairs, and coverage of shipping twice. So whatever the shipping was, so $40 in this instance, if they're charging $20 per adapter, we're talking $40. So we're now looking at approximately 95 USD per recall. I can promise you these were sold at more than 50,000 units. That's a lot of money. Let's just see right now. And I could probably do this in my head, but I'm a little dumb at the moment. So let's just say $95 times 50,000 units. That is a $4.75 million potential recall. 50,000 units times 95. $4.75 million of potential recall costs. That does not include the cost of the lawyers. That does not include the reputational cost of hit to your brand. And I'm telling you right now, I don't want this to be the case, but I would really hate for this to be the end of CableMod because of trying. Look, and this is the only reason I say I know them for 8 years, because those can take that as Jay's just doing damage control for the brand. No, I'm doing damage control for the consumer. I honestly am, regardless of how you want to peg it. But I only say that because I have personal experience with the people behind the brand, the people behind the product design, and their intentions. And the intentions have always been good. And I've said 1,000 times, and I will say it 1,000 more times, it's not when a problem happens with a brand that earns brand loyalty. It is how they handle their problems that deserves brand loyalty. And I feel like, although late, CableMod does appear to be moving in the right direction. This is going to be very expensive. Now, I just showed 4.75 million. That's hypothetically if every single adapter sold made its way back. That's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You have people that probably sold the adapter, they already tossed the adapter, and I want to say, look, usually for a recall, like to get your money back, etc., you have to surrender the thing. You can't just be like, oh, I don't have the thing anymore, but I want my money back. Like, the point of the recall is to get it out of the public. Take it back, destroy it, whatever. It's like when there's bad food that has to be recalled, right? They destroy the food. Now, when food gets recalled, typically you don't get your money back. If there's bad steaks or bad kale or whatever with E. coli or whatever all over it, you don't get your money back for that most of the time. They'll give you some sort of like, hey, call this number to apply for your coupon. Most people don't. But in this instance, you should. CableMod has a record of everyone they sold to or bought direct. If you bought from Amazon, you should still have that listing. If you bought from third party or Craigslist or whatever, good luck. You're probably not going to get any money for that. But I think this is a step in the right direction. But again, a lot of this is hypothetical because there's no confirmation yet on any CPA stuff. We need to see a case number and we need to see an action plan. I just said that the action plan should include the cost of the adapter. So if you have a V1.1, then that means you either bought it new or you got it in replacement for your V1.0. So you're not entitled for a refund for 1.0 and a 1.1. The 1.1 was the refund for the 1.0, unfortunately ended up having the same problem. So that's why the cost of it should be once, not twice. Shipping both ways, that's still waiting to be seen. They may do that, they may not do that. I think CableMod should also offer for those that still have faith in the brand and that have an issue with the cable fitting in their side panel, offer a cost differential as well of maybe a 90-degree angled cable and then the difference in cost back. But again, that's up to you to decide. Like, do you still trust CableMod? So it's unfortunate to see. I hate drama like this, but it is what it is. You know, it is a problem. It is there. It is tangible. It is recreatable. And the damages are apparent. So Now he's got to wait and see what happens officially when they're in the we can talk about it now phase. Because like I said, I reached out and we got the we can't talk about it, which really leads me to believe lawyer, CPA, action plan, all these things are going to start happening. But they're going to happen in phases. Because once it goes to the CPA, hypothetically or theoretically, if it goes to the CPA and it gets a case number, then you'll know, hey, it's an official recall. But you won't know what's going to happen from there yet until the action plan is approved. Overseeing body, takes time and it's slow. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Sound off down below. Is Cable Mod forever off your radar? Or are you potentially gonna well, you know what? For the regular cables, like 24 pins and EPS and all that sort of stuff, there's never really been a problem. Are you still gonna trust that? Or are you gonna, let's just wait and see? Because you might still be willing to buy cables from them, but if you think they are dicking people around when it comes to how the recall is gonna be handled, then you're gonna be like, screw that. So it's all in Cable Mod's court right now.